we're live, Daniel. So I'm going to take a moment here and introduce you. Everyone, welcome to our Tuesday Talks with Greg. Today, I have the extreme pleasure to introduce you to one of my friends from Germany, my friend Daniel here, who's joining us. And we're going to talk about drumming and all different things about leather, working with these hides, how Daniel builds his drums, and everything that goes along with that. So if you're watching us today on Facebook, make sure you like our page so that you can see other interviews like this. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and we'll tell you how to get to Daniel's website in just a little bit too. So Daniel, welcome to our talk.
Thank you so much, Gregory. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on here too. I know we're sweating over here in the Northwest today, so I wonder if you guys are also feeling the heat over in Germany.
Oh, it's been so hot and humid at the same time, but luckily, I mean, it's in the middle of the night here, so it's not as bad, I guess, as where you are right now.
Definitely, yeah. We're in the middle of the day, so we're heating up. So Daniel, I'd like you to talk a little bit about how you got into making drums. Now, I know that you make saddles and you work with leather. And so how was that transition from moving from the saddles and the bags and things like that into making these beautiful instruments? And I do, before you answer that too, I want to show everyone, Daniel was so gracious to gift me one of the most beautiful drums I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And not only I want to show you the front of it, but look at how beautiful the back is. The back is absolutely gorgeous. And I'll move my hand so you can see the sun coming through it as well. So Daniel, can you talk a little bit about your process of making these absolutely gorgeous drums?
Yes, sure. Actually, the saddle came after I started drums, but the drumming and drums have always been with me. When I was little, I started learning to play the guitar when I was very little, but I was really kind of never into it. But I've always been kind of drumming and playing on my dad's like, what is it, suitcase and things like that. Yeah, his leather case, and so I got into playing drums. And then while I was traveling through South and Central America, I had the opportunity to make my first ceremonial drum, and it was like, being like jumping into cold water. It was a drum for moon dance.
Yeah.
So that I was asked, hey Daniel, can you make a drum? I said, yeah, of course I can make a drum.
Sure.
And I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? And am I actually allowed to do this? And so yeah, it was a 2-week total intense process. And but the result was so amazing, so primal, and it's nothing that I would say I actively created. It just kind of came,
like channeled through. It needed to be created.
Exactly. That's exactly right. It's really hard to, put it into words. It's more, of a feeling process. And from there, I made another one, a smaller drum actually, because a moon dance or sun dance drum is huge and heavy and meant to be for several people. And I wanted to make a smaller frame drum that I could use personally. And so I did, and I gifted this one to a friend, and she was she was so happy and excited about it. And then I more requests from other people to make a drum. It's never something that I said, oh, I'm going to make drums for other people. I've always been asked. And so yeah, and now we're talking about the drums.
Yes, and now you're making quite a few that are making their way all around the world, which is a fantastic, beautiful gift. So thank you for that. So I see on here, Deborah's chiming in. Hello, Deborah. How you doing? Welcome to our talk here. And everyone, if you have any questions for Daniel about drumming, type them in. And I'm going to be going back and forth between the two screens so that I can ask your question to Daniel and he can answer it for you. So Daniel, you talked about making these drums for this ceremony, this moon dance. And I'd love to know, the different animal hides that you work with, they have different spirits, they have different energies to them. And are there certain reasons why you would, first of all, I'd love to know what type of hides you work with. And second of all, what type of hides have different meanings for you? So why might you choose a buffalo drum for someone as opposed to a horse or a deer or a bear or any other type of animal? I found some beautiful alpaca drums down in Peru when I went. And so I brought one of those home with me too to play with that essence of that animal. So can you talk a little bit about the animal hides?
Yes, of course. I think that's the most important part of the drum, of course. And so I work with mm, horse, horse, of course, a buffalo, camel, goat,
Mhm.
mm, and then uh, s- s- steer, for example,
Yeah.
um, bull hides. Um, yes,
And can you
I
tell
might have.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about like if someone say someone's watching and they say I really want a drum, can you share some of your characteristics that you find with a horse? Now, for us, I know a lot of times when I think of a horse, I think of that the carrier of the people, and so maybe people who are leading drum circles or people who are leading big gatherings may want to use a horse drum. Maybe other people who are journeying or meditating may choose to use a buffalo drum. So could you talk a little bit about the reason for some of those different hides to be used?
Yes, of course. I think every culture has a different perspective on the animal, on each animal. And you were talking about the goat, the drum you had from in Peru was a
Alpaca.
alpaca. So I mean that comes that because there are lots of alpacas, so it's it's very easy, easy access to the rawhide. But so I try to disconnect from the cultural aspects.
Mhm.
That's another layer and another perspective. So like the very kind of um, raw perspective on the drum height for me is horse, for example. Horse is a very I would say aware and intelligent and present animal. So it has a different, yeah, I would say different grade of consciousness. I would almost put it that way, because horse has always been in close contact with like Homo sapiens growing up, and in certain cultures, the foals, like the baby horses, were actually being kept inside the tent
Mhm.
growing up with the family. So they naturally, epigenetically, they have a different awareness. So I very rarely use horse.
Yeah.
Um, um, Only if people really request it. It has a beautiful tone, a really warm character to it. I really love it. And then of course there are cultural aspects to the horse, and in every tradition, the you know in America, in North America, it's the carrier of the people, as you say. Um, might be different towards the more eastern part of Germany, Europe. Sorry for that. Um, and and then if you take camel for example, camel I would always give it the notation of gold. For example, gold. It has this golden shine to it, and camel is carrying you, is taking care of you, carrying you through the desert, or you're being um, your guide, and really getting you through really tough times. It's an incredibly resilient animal, and I like to really look at the animal itself and how it's interacting with the surroundings when I you know think about the drum hide. And then so yeah, so a camel for example is really warm and golden, has also a very beautiful tone, very strong tone. The skin is thick, horse is a little thinner. And then buffalo for example, I like buffalo is a different animal. You really have to be careful with buffalo. And buffalo is a little darker also from the coloring. Um, Also very have can have lots of scratch marks as well, and also like dark, I would say, freckles. And I like to um I like to choose buffalo for people who aren't afraid of doing shadow work, who aren't afraid of working with, the darker aspects.
Yeah.
Yes, and then there's goat, and goat is also a very amazing drum height because it has a very wide tone range. It can sound very dark, but also sounds very beautiful in the higher regions. Um, and yeah, I think that covers quite a bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that perspective there. So we've had a few people chime in here for questions. Daryl, nice to see you. My friend Daryl from Carnation here is joined on here. So Daryl, yes, we're early today because my friend Daniel here is in Germany. So it's what is it, about 11 o'clock your time at night, Daniel?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so we're gonna go a little bit earlier today. So I'm glad you could make it. Now Heidi says, I don't know what kind of hide my drum is, but it goes flat in our humid climate. Is there a hide that will not do that? And so I'll answer my perspective, and then definitely Daniel chime in on that. So Heidi, one of the things that you can do when you have your drum is, depending on the atmosphere, depending on the climate that you're in. So if you're in a very dry atmosphere, you may have to add a little bit of water to that drum to soften the hide and bring it back into tone. If you're in a very moist environment, think about it this way. The hide of this drum, this is the one that Daniel made for me. The hide that I'm touching right here was at one time a living animal, and it had that sun beating on its back. It felt the rain. It was eating the grass out in the woods and in the fields and stuff. And so when we play this, we bring this animal's spirit back to life. So if you think about it that way, you have to feed an animal, you have to give an animal water, you have to give it care and attention. And the drums have the same type of thing. So these are alive in my mind. And so if it's too humid, if it's too wet, you want to dry it out. So you want to place the drum near a heat source to try to dry out some of that excess moisture, and that will bring it back into balance, back into tone. And the same thing on the other end, if you're in Arizona and it's really dry and really hot, then you may want to massage some water into that drum and bring it to life. And you can also kind of massage it. I like to massage it anyway to try to build that connection between my spirit and the spirit of the drum, because there's, my skin is touching the skin of the animal, and we try to develop that bond together, and my hand is warming the drum at that same time. So depending on which climate you're in, it will adjust. You'll have to adjust how you play that drum to get it to that place of balance. And so can you talk a little bit about that, Daniel, too? That's just my perspective. What's yours on that?
Yes, you were totally right. There's just, I would actually exactly say the same. There's something I can maybe add. It depends on what kind of animal it is. For example, goat doesn't really work, especially goat has lots of dense hair roots. These are, kind of openings to the drum skin, and so they soak even better, like moisture from the air. It's a perfect indicator for humidity, your drum, right? If the drum sounds flat, it's very humid. If the pitch is really high, it's very dry. So goat, you really have to be careful with goat. You have to really find the perfect conditions, because it's very sensitive to moisture because of the pores. So the moisture creep goes into the drum skin, and you can if you're sitting in your bathtub and look at your fingers after 30 minutes, they're kind of all like, what is it?
Pruning.
Yeah,
they get all raisiny.
And they are soaking up the water, and so the skin is kind of swelling, and so there's almost like excess skin, and so kind of making these folds. And you can it's the same thing you see in your drum skin. Once you add moisture, the skin is kind of swelling, and so there's more material, so the skin loses tension automatically. It's always coming back to natural if it's dry, if it's drying out. And also thinner skins are reacting more sensitive to moisture. If the drum skin is thicker, it's you will probably not have a problem with humidity. If it's raining outside, a thicker skin just takes lots more time to soak up that to soak up that humidity and to go flat. And
that's kind of a nice parallel with humans, right? Thinner skins they are a little more sensitive. People with thicker skins are a little bit, harder to move around. So that parallel there as well. That's awesome. So we have a few other questions here, Daniel. So Heidi asked another question, can I put it in the sun? And yes, absolutely. The sun will dry that up for you and get it nice and tight again, especially with that humidity. It needs to be drier. So if the sun is kind of warming it, that's a great thing you can use, another natural element. Deborah asked, so other than the physical characteristics of the hide, does the animal and how they lived make a difference as well? So I guess, Daniel, she's asking, so she says, other than the physical characteristics, does the way the animal lived make a difference in choosing a drum for someone?
Yes, of course. Age, for example, is a good indicator. The older an animal gets, the more marks the skin will have, the further apart the pores will be, like where the hair is coming out, but also the thicker the skin will get. And that's a pretty good indicator. If there's if the animal is getting really old and is not having many scratch marks, that means it's living in a pretty open space and it's not confronting, having to confront other animals and not, being in fights. Yes, and that's something I really pay close attention to, because otherwise you would see kind of chain marks on the drum skin. So we can talk about the source, like sourcing the skins maybe later. But yeah, that's and and I wanted to add about putting in the sun. You really have to be a little careful, depending on also again how thick the drum skin is. And I would never put it in the sun and then go to work and come back,
Yeah.
because what could happen is the drum skin shrinks so much, it's either ripping at some point, the skin itself is ripping, or sometimes the skin, if you have a thick drum skin, it's going to crush the drum frame where it's sitting on and break the frame. So you can, it's best to have a sun facing room, to store the drum. And
Well, I
yeah,
know too,
just
even using heat, when I have a heat source, I think this was Heidi who asked this question. When it's been the winter time and it's been pretty damp out, rainy here in the Northwest, and I have a heater, I will literally hold it in front of the heater for like maybe 30 seconds and then play it and then put it back in 30 seconds. I mean, it's like Daniel said, I would never leave it in the heater for a long time because it dries out really quick. It's alive. It's like you sitting in the sun for an hour, you'd be thirsty after a couple of minutes. So, so
and
that's a great thing.
it's really quick, as you said. It's
Yeah.
not too much time, especially the sun is so powerful.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really
And
quick.
Daniel, Carol Ann asked about, I'm just trying to find this question about bear grease. She said, would you use bear grease on a drum? And so I've never worked with bear grease. I don't know much about it. Do you by any chance?
To condition the drum skin,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
So the rawhide is very sensitive. So I would try to avoid putting anything on the drum skin as long as you can. No oil, because probably if you use oil for your skin, it's going to dry out your skin eventually. So you need to have something. There's well, talking about leather work, there are certain pieces of equipment you can use on a horse. There's a thing called hackamore, and it's a braided rawhide mouthpiece, and this thing is exposed to crazy weather conditions all the time. I mean, lots of sun, lots of rain, and there's always something pulling on it. And so there's something called vaquero rawhide cream. Yeah, it's a very simple thing, and now you can get it online. But I would use that as a last resource, last resort. At the very end, if you really feel the drum is drying and it's kind of the skin is cracking, then just apply a little bit of that vaquero rawhide cream.
Okay.
And nothing, basically, that's specifically made for rawhide. It's very very sensitive, and you create more damage if you use something else rather than actually condition the skin.
Sure. Yeah, my friend Kelly, we did the woman that you all met last week when she did our interview on Tuesday. We were drumming in Colorado at the high altitude, and it was really dry. and she was playing her drum and it actually split while she was playing it. So she probably could have used some of that conditioner that you mentioned to kind of soften up that skin in the dry, high altitude conditions. So yeah. So Daniel, now you make a lot of drums for people. Can you express a little bit about what that process is? You know, when you're making your drum, if someone asks you to make one for them, like you and I did a beautiful interview process where you asked a little bit about me and my goals for this drum. And so, you know, that way when people can see it, you know, this was representative of what Daniel came to after our interview. So can you talk a little bit about that process for people?
Yes, of course. So, so I rarely get to meet people who order a drum in person. So we often meet online, like like through Zoom. So,
Yep.
and my aim is to create. I call them a medicine tool, like something that's of use for you. But you are kind of in unity together. So my aim is to create something that will be useful for you along your way, that you can take along your journey, because we are constantly changing. If you think about yourself 3 years ago, you would think, oh my God, what was I thinking? Right? Because we're constantly changing, and
Yeah.
I don't want to make something for you that fits for you right now. I'm trying to find out, what can what can we create, what can we co-create that is going to be of service for you, that will work with you also, in the far future. Because I don't want, the drum to be something like a toy,
Sure.
that's going to end up somewhere in the corner. And so I try to learn as much as possible about the person, try to find out, okay, where is this person heading, toward what direction. And so I'm trying to create this mosaic of um, different stories, different information about the background. And the more I know, the more I learn about the person, the clearer and the easier it is for me to choose the right ingredients for the drum. I call them, ingredients, and not necessarily materials.
Sure.
It's yeah. And mm, and there's one aspect that's very important, I think, is, we have whether we want it or not, but we have inherited through our parents and grandparents and great grandparents certain aspects, like interests and skills and talents that were useful for them, for survival, while they were alive. And um, I'm trying to mm, find out, um, what's what kind of what this person has inherited, what they are naturally um, kind of being pulled towards. What do you think? I'd ask, um, what do you see in yourself that you can recognize in, past generations, in your ancestors?
Yeah.
Because at some point, they will appear, and they will guide us in a certain way. Um, if a person, for example, is um, really good with, let's say, the healing element, right? Like being able to apply medicine, and being the medicine for people, you're very likely to see that in future no, in past generations.
Yeah.
And so, getting this, mm, getting this essence is very important for me, because it tells a lot about, this person, where it's probably, could be heading,
Sure.
combined with all the information the person is, you know giving me about the life
Absolutely.
itself. So yeah, and that's also very important to, when it comes to what kind of drum does this person need. Is it going to be a more darker one, because the person is most likely going to do some shadow work in the future,
Sure.
or is it going to be, a little lighter, more um, yeah, more on the lighter side, for
Right.
example. Yeah,
Now,
very simple.
you also mentioned, about this, how this process works for people when they're trying to build a new drum with you. Can you express a little bit about the act of drumming? So for me, it's like when I'm working with a drum and I'm by myself and I close my eyes, I'm just kind of playing that drum. It's that tool, it's that medicine tool, that shamanic tool that kind of unites both the physical plane that I'm here in my own bedroom and also that spiritual plane. And like I said before, I'm connecting with the spirit of the animal in that drum, and I'm feeling that heartbeat of the earth, and I'm feeling that grounded energy, especially that drum beat just kind of brings back that primal grounding connection to nature. And so if you could advise someone who is maybe not even aware of drumming as a tool that they could use at home, what might you say to someone? What is your experience with drumming? Why do you like to drum, and how does it make you feel? And that way people who are new, they may say, hey, I want to try that. Oh, we
Oh
can't
yeah,
hear you. There you go. Yeah.
sorry.
I couldn't hear you, but you're good now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, the tactic. So, so there are certain, like, also different levels, but I think I always like to start with the most primal aspect of drumming, and it's the feeling of of groove, doing something that's not causing your brain to to burn too much energy, like being in a group. People who like to cook, it's like chopping up things, right? Cooking, you're getting into like an automated um, kind of work mode, and 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 also if you think about, when people used to grind up corn, for example, to create food. There were several people around something like a pot or a grain, right? No, corn or grain, whatever it is, it's dried out, it's in there. And so they used like um, long kind of pieces of wood,
Sure.
branches, and so there were like three people around something, one pot, and so they had to stay in their rhythm, it would go 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, and so you do that, um, and that's something very primal, very natural. Also, when you walk, if you walk long distances, Homo sapiens had to walk a very long distances, you start getting into a groove. So it's very, very natural, actually. And I often hear that people say, oh, I would want a drum, but I feel like they sometimes say, I don't feel like I deserve a drum, or I'm not ready for a drum. You can be sure you're always ready for a drum. You don't necessarily need to get a drum right now, but you can find something that you can drum on and just start, something that gives a nice drumming sound, and just start, and you will it might feel a bit uncomfortable at the beginning, saying, what am I doing? It doesn't really sound. You don't have to play a certain rhythm or anything, just ignore that, start tapping, just try a different
Even on your
like
heart, just kind of get that beat on your heart, just kind of feel that on your chest.
exactly. And there's a specific reasons why people like really get easily hooked up with like electronic, like EDM or whatever. It's if you listen to, they almost always have the same beats per minute.
Mhm.
It might sound faster because there are more parts or different instruments, but they always have a very kind of a bass speed. And if you find that, just go for it. Try different beats per minute, and you will find that you will get into this groove, and then just keep on going. And you will feel your body kind of going into entering a different state. It's the state of groove that I was talking about. And then, obviously, and then you can use that as a vehicle to enter a more spiritual aspect. You can really start using this to journey.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
go someplace in your mind. Yeah. It's awesome. Well, Daniel, we are near the end of our 30 minutes here. This goes by so quick. So I had a few questions real quick, and then Lukey wanted to come over and say hi to everyone because he hasn't seen everyone in a long time. So Marjorie asked, is there, what did she say here? Oh, does vibration from the drum affect a person's energy? And I would say absolutely. So, I mean, that, like I said, it can totally shift the way you feel. It can change your mindset if you need that kind of freshening up. And just, it's like smudging, you know, it does something to you. It just changes that energy. In my perspective there. And then Deborah asked too, could you drum something on the Zoom call? But Deborah, we'll have to make a recording for you through Zoom. So we're doing this through Zoom and then it goes to Facebook. And so also too, with Daniel being 11 o'clock, he has a newborn baby over there who's asleep. So we will have to do a little audio recording or something for you so that you can hear those drummings. But other than that, again, thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have any final words, Daniel, we want to send you, if you want to learn more about what Daniel does, basarabdrums.com, BASARAB drums.com. And I'll put a link in the comments to this below where you can see his beautiful pieces and you can see my drum. And I did a little statement for him, put a picture up there, which was really nice. And so Daniel, I just want to thank you. And if you have any last things to say, now's the time to share that with everyone.
Well, yeah, just talking about finding out about your ancestry. I just recently learned that my great-grandfather made the feather fans and feather dresses for Josephine Baker.
No way.
Yes, I was like, that kind of proves that you will naturally feel drawn toward what you are good at, and we are lucky. We have the choices. You know, our parents and grandparents, they weren't able to do that because of war, because of so many times, like different things. So, you know, chase that and, you know, find the thing that, you know, makes you happy.
And it's a beautiful way to honor your ancestors and where you came from too, you know, doing this drumming and the different connections to spirituality and ceremony that we've been talking about too. So thank you again, Daniel. I really appreciate it. And for those of you on the West Coast, especially the Pacific Northwest, I hope you stay cool today. Lukey and I are going to run over to the river in a little bit and go swimming because we are sweating over here trying to stay cool. So Daniel, sweet dreams to you. And I hope everyone else has a beautiful rest of your day. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye, guys.
Take care. Bye.